Hey, Jenna.
Hey, Dom.
So, a lot was happening right as we sat down to record this week's show, huh?
Well, there was really only one big story that was happening. They picked a pope.
They pick up the Popa.
I literally texted you. I'm like, Dom, they picked a pope.
Oh, they pick up the Popa. And we had to take a break. It was so funny because we were gonna start recording. We're like, okay, you got me into it actually, because I
Well,
wasn't gonna
because
watch
yeah.
this.
No, I couldn't not watch it. I'm not even Catholic, and I was invested in the drama of this moment.
I was just like, whatever, I'll watch whenever they post on TikTok. But you got me into it because you're like, oh, look, there's a hand. There's a hand in the curtain. I think we go over there. I was like, okay, we have to watch this now.
Yes. So what you're going to hear instead of our headlines is not only Dom and myself reacting to the American Pope, but on top of that, also what it's like covering a breaking news situation like this and, the joys and the pitfalls and just the hair pulling out consternation of managing broadcast, at least that's where we are, when sometimes you're just waiting for the big reveal. The big reveal.
And then we also have part two of our interview with Pat King. And so excited for you to hear the rest of that story. So, let-
Exactly. So let's start the show. Hi, I'm Jenna.
and I'm Dom. You know what's funny? Not long ago, we were both breaking news. Now we're
Breaking unemployment records.
exactly just like thousands of other journalists who've been laid off from newsrooms across the country.
Yeah, and after the shock wore off, we kept asking ourselves, what the hell do we do now?
And over many, many cups of coffee,
And maybe a few drinks.
we realized we had a unique opportunity here. Why not pull back the curtain on what's really happening in American media?
Right? I mean, we've spent years in this industry seeing how stories get made or don't, and now we can actually talk about it.
And trust me, there's a lot to talk about. From local news disappearing to social media reshaping journalism, we'll break it all down.
And look, we're not here to lecture anybody. We just want to help make sense of the information that we're getting and maybe have some much needed fun along the way.
So whether you're glued to the news, just trying to figure out what's real in your feed, or curious about the future of media, come hang with us.
Welcome to Laid Off and Looking, a podcast where two journalists
Are taking a critical look at American media.
wait, the curtain moved. Small, here we go!
Here he
Oh my
comes.
God, here he comes! It's
Here
the
they come.
Popa! Who is it?
It's an American
They
Monsignor,
picked an American? They picked one of ours?
and they're saying he's a moderate. Look at them pulling a shocker.
Wow. First of all, Cardinal Dolan must feel a type of way right now. But oh my God, I
Wow.
never would have guessed.
I've got to say. I
They
mean, but you
picked the
see, isn't this interesting how
American.
this is how they work too sometimes, right? Like they'll have all these names of people that they throw out there that are, they're the top contenders. And then all of a sudden it's always this pope that comes out of nowhere, or it feels that way at least.
Well, I mean, that's part of the suspense of the show, Dom.
It's kind of how it worked in Conclave, the movie. It's like
Oh my God.
wham,
Okay,
there it
so
is.
here's my question. Um, what I well, actually, do I know what my question is? I'm still stunned that they chose an American. Um,
I've got to say, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. Robert Prevost of the U.S., the first American pontiff in history, he'll be known as Pope Leo the 14th. Huh.
oh,
Interesting. This
do we
comes
know his
after.
birthday? Is he a Leo?
He's born September 14th, 1955. So he's 69. He's a Virgo.
Oh, for this, because I mean, we've both had instances where like news broke,
Oh,
and then that weird, awkward whatever it is as you're waiting for the rest of like you know what I'm saying? Like when you've gone like
yeah.
breaking news, but you don't have
I
the full story.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
I
that.
cover I mean, I covered when who was the Pope? It was 2005. Who was the Pope that passed? Then it went to
Oh,
Pope
John
Ben.
Paul but died.
Oh, is that when he died in
I
nine
think
in
that
2000?
was. I think it
Hold on,
was.
I
No,
gotta
we'll
look.
look it up. Okay. Because I just remember the dude who died had been Pope what felt like forever. And then we got, and I have to stop calling him Palpatine because that wasn't his name.
Oh wow, it was him.
I thought so, yeah, because I remember he had been the Pope my whole childhood.
So when he died, I was at Fox. I remember it was a crazy time. 2005 was nuts because there was a lot going on. There was Katrina happened.
That was
There
2000.
were
Whatever. Anyway, I don't remember.
2005.
Yeah. Okay.
It
Wow.
happened August 2005. So yeah, it's 20-year anniversary this year.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but it was so Katrina happened and then the Pope and there was other stuff too. It was like
The war in
nonstop.
Iraq.
Uh, that was still, but yeah, that was, as I'm just making sure. Yeah, Katrina was August, 2005. But wow, I remember that, uh, I was asked to help book because what was, I think they weren't, I don't know if anybody expected anything was going to happen. Anyway, I had to book overnight. Like I had to book the overnight shift covering the Pope stuff. And it was just like I had to book guests for every hour. And I somehow locked into this book publicist. It was like it was a weeknight and it must have been like, I don't know, 7 o'clock. I'm by myself and I'm in charge of booking overnights through the early morning hour. And I just remember that I was by myself. And then actually, one of my other friends and producers ended up staying, but I was in charge of really booking the entire. And it was just like I looked into working with this book publicist who had all these great authors who were religious authors, and I
Wow.
would just booked them. I booked everyone. They were great experts too. And I remember one of the overnight people hosts because I had to also do packets and I wrote intros for each of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the hosts was just like, "You did this by yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like I
It
just
was just me.
it was just me. I said, I he's like, and he was so I forget his name too. He was really he was not he was not always super nice to everybody, but he was very appreciative of that because he was like, and they were great and the packets were great. I was like, it just worked out because I'm telling you, had I not run into that book publicist along the way, I would have been so screwed because I would have had to just like book people individually, and that would have been
Oh,
difficult when
that
you're
would have been
talking about.
insane amount of phone calls
It's like yeah, to
and
book like
vetting
you're
and
looking,
everything. Yeah.
and again, these are overnight hours. You're
Yeah.
talking about 2, 3, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. It ain't easy getting people to want to stay up. And then what you do is you try to book people out of state or out of like we're on the East Coast. So you're looking for people on the West Coast, or maybe you're trying to get somebody out of the country. So, but that Pope thing, man, that killed me.
Well, if
It-
I were producing, so first of all, because we already complained about the moving the camera around, like I would have kept a single shot on the balcony, because that's really all anybody wanted to see. If I was producing, by the way, for television, even though for radio, I think it would have been more about, the anchor, because you got to fill that time. But as soon as it was clear who this dude was, we would have immediately, I would have had it set up and we would have immediately cut to a partner station or something in Chicago.
yeah, I mean, but
That's where
once you know
that's
that,
exactly where, because if you're gonna, that's really where the celebration theoretically and the shock, by the way.
and if you're a crew in Chicago, you know they are running around right now trying to get people who know who the new pope is, who were, whether it's family, people who work with him.
Oh, yes,
You're going through
yes.
everything. You want the personal story. You're trying to get I mean, this is huge in terms of historically, of course, it's the first American pope, but now this whole, and honestly, it's kind of really,
I'm really
it's
shocked
kind
that
of
they went with
smart.
an American. It is okay.
I
Give me your
well, I
theory
don't
on
know.
why it's smart.
I'm thinking to myself like, listen, I say whatever we want about where we fall in the world order. I think it's really interesting that they've
Fall is the
chosen.
right word, Dom.
Yes, yes, I know, but they're kind of trying to bet on something maybe of like it's a very this is like it's a again it's a first. They've never had an American pope, and this is an interesting time to have one who is from America. Who I don't know what maybe what different thought wise of how they run. how they run the church is different. I know they mentioned briefly that this new pope is a moderate. I don't know what that even means anymore.
Well,
It's like,
that's
I mean, I
also
get
very
it,
true.
but I am curious to see like the kind of excitement it brings in this country too, which is
I
as
think we're
far again,
mostly stunned.
but that's a big thing. Like, how often are you stunned? It would have been very predictable to keep the Pope as, you know,
You know
I think
what?
in the
Because
past.
I was going to say, how often are you stunned? Given the state of current
Yeah,
events, I would say frequently, but I'm not stunned in a good way. It's mostly like bad stunned. This is just like, oh my God.
but it's, I think that's it's interesting. And I think for, especially for Catholics here, I'm very curious. Like, I wouldn't, I would probably refer to myself as a lapsed Catholic. Like, I don't really, I was born Catholic, but and I followed it throughout much of my life. But I mean, I still have some ties in the sense of the traditions, but I wouldn't say I don't really follow anymore. But I find I'm very curious to see how people who are here, how they will see this. There is an excitement, and maybe that's what kind of part of what they're also going for too. I mean, listen, I get it. People will look and say they're a church, but they are also a business, and there's something to be said about headlines, having the first American pope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could. So let's see. It would have been a headline regardless, because if they had gone back to an Italian or to a European,
Yeah,
then that would have been a headline like, oh, the church goes back to its Italian roots
yeah,
or something like that.
yeah.
And if they had chosen a church from church, God, if they had chosen a cardinal of color, that would have been a huge headline. Like I
That would have
really
been.
thought like that the Filipino cardinal had a really good shot. Um, and but yeah, I never in a million years thought the Americans were in the running.
But that's it. Why did we think that we weren't in the running? Because we're still a young country. We're still, like, compared to everybody else in the world, we're still a really young country. And you think about it, and it's kind of like,
I just
wow, America? We got a
like
pope?
I know. I guess my thing is just I just considering the role that the Pope plays in the world, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not even Catholic, but considering the role that the Pope plays in the world and the way that the world in general seems to be feeling about Americans right now,
Hmm?
I'm just like, you picked one of our guys? Like, I don't know if I was from another country and the Pope came and he opened his mouth and I heard an American accent, I cannot with you people right now.
I mean, I'm curious how do you, again, I know as a when you're a host and you're hosting these types of things, like when you have to vamp that much, because sometimes,
Oh,
let's keep it
that
real, you
is
don't always have the
work.
guest. How and I get there's sort of a dance that you do right
Oh,
between,
there's
like,
totally a dance that you do. And there's stuff that like so you if we were working this, you
mhm,
would be in my earpiece and you'd be feeding me like just factoids or whatever that I could vamp about. You'd be telling me about we have this new guest up. Hopefully we had a guest in studio. Well, this is theoretically if we were in studio. So hopefully we had a guest in studio. Um you would have like a bunch of people who maybe we were pulling up via,
mhm.
satellite or whatever, blah, blah, blah. We might have some people coming in, but like it would be one of those as a host, it would be one of those it's not challenging, but it's something that if you're not accustomed to it, it's weird. You are fully engaged in a conversation with somebody while someone else or two
Yes.
other people are fully engaged in conversations in
Well,
your head. No, Jenna, I need it now. I need it now. I'm like mid sentence, just like
yeah,
I'm gonna have to put a pin in that
yeah.
and get
Well,
to that point.
you have timing. You have people who are
Yeah,
counting you down to, like, you have, 3 more minutes with this guest. Oh, we have breaking news. Oh, there's an
exactly.
update, and you have to hear that while still talking sometimes.
And make it as smooth a transition as you can. And timing is big because, again, so for our show that we worked on together, we were live to tape, but we were still taped. So we
Right.
didn't have to build in like, funder breaks or like top of the
Right.
hour news breaks or something or commercial breaks. But if I was in public radio, we would have been live. And yes, all of those breaks would have had like, we're gonna hit the post, don't blow it.
Yeah.
Whilst also I am yip yapping in your ear.
When I worked in cable, we used to, a big deal was to say you're blowing the brakes. Like, because that meant you were basically, really, you were saying we're screwing our
Yeah.
ads and we're screwing the money. And because we have
Don't
to. And
F
that
with the
used to be,
money.
but we had to do that a number of times. Like, you just like blowing brakes. We can't, because you would notice what is everybody else showing? That's the thing, too.
Well,
Like,
did
you're
you guys
looking
have
at
a name for that? Because one of
blowing the
the
brakes.
oh,
We
blowing
used
the break.
to,
Okay, because
we're
one of the
blowing the
first
brakes.
stations I worked at, we used to call that going wall to wall.
And that, well, wall to wall is more like that's coverage. How we said that for us, at least, we're doing wall to wall coverage on this was something that was decided beforehand or right during the process when you see something's getting big. But for like something like this, you're saying we're going wall to wall with this today. It
Yeah,
sort of had, for us, it mostly had a planned, unless there was some kind of tragedy, like something crazy that happened. And I think,
I think an
like,
American
such as
Pope is kind of crazy.
but this they planned probably. Like they as much as they could, they know like
Yeah,
once he's decided we're doing wall to wall. But for us, when you're in a breaking news situation when you're expecting to take breaks, then you're saying we're blowing through breaks. We're not, we're not coming out, we're doing this. And a lot of times you are watching your competition during this because you do want
right,
to see
right. No,
how is
because you
somebody else
do
doing
have
this.
all the TVs on in the
Yeah.
newsroom.
We have the wall
Yep.
of like what everybody else is, how everybody else is covering, who are their guests that they have on. Because sometimes you see guests that you're there, you're like, I want them. Oh my God, why can't we get them? How did they get them? Can get on the phone. Let's see if we could get
Oh
them.
my God. And yes, that's when the EP's just like, get on the phone, make it happen. It's like,
Make
I'm
it
sorry,
happen.
I'll get the magic wand out.
Yeah. Oh, and then the best part is when you have to sometimes be able to like track down where they are. You know where the studio is. Maybe you have the number for their publicist. Maybe you have like it's that's what you're looking out for because you're all looking at you want to have the best guests for your segments and also the host and the correspondents you have there too. Like we saw on CBS, like they were tossing to our correspondents who were in the crowd. Like you get different interactions. Like what's the crowd feel like? Then you have somebody else who's talking about the history. You have different people who are offering different elements. But I always, like I said to me, I always thought it's so being a host in those situations, there's so much pressure in terms of maintaining that information and knowing how to make the smooth transition through it all. Because
Yeah.
that's not easy, because you still have to be thinking, you have to be listening and you have to know your times. You're depending on the producers to give you the right time. That's the thing too, the countdown. Like people would sometimes in a situation like this, you start counting out, like we have 3 minutes till our break and then you're like paying attention or we have 3 minutes till we go to the let's say one of our correspondents
Hmm.
and then sometimes you have to be maintaining that conversation and knowing what you want to get out of this interview. It's not like you're like, oh whatever, I have 3 minutes to waste. You have to, right, Jenna, like you're
Yeah,
there
no, that's
thinking of
1000% true. And let's see. For it's very strange because the television that I've done again has been taped television. And no, sorry, we did have a countdown clock. It was under the
yeah,
camera. Like there was the
yeah,
teleprompter with the okay, so because I'm just like, because I remember where the
we did.
countdown clock was in the radio
we
studio.
tried to we tried to do live to I mean we definitely did. Yeah, we tried to do live to tape as much
Because
as
I
we
can
could.
actually, I've gotten to the point now where I can handle that pretty well. Where like if I can see where the time is, like I've come to understand enough of like the cadence of my voice, etc.,
Mhm.
how much time, blah blah blah, da, 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 and boom, and still hit the post.
It's just
It's
like I
such a
said, the
weird skill
stress.
to have.
Well, it is because it's got to be like I said. It's like, and I guess it's something, and you tell me. But like, I feel like it's a skill to have. But like, you feel like it builds up? Have you noticed yourself, or have you always just had that skill, or was that
No,
something
no,
you
no,
just?
no, no. That was something that I had to learn how to do. Like I definitely had to learn how to do that.
It's not like I said when you have somebody in your ear, and it's I really do find it funny because to explain it to somebody, it's like just have an ear pod in and have somebody talking to you. And, listen to a podcast and talk to somebody while you're doing that and see
And
how it
that's
feels.
exactly what it's like. That's exact because it's an ongoing conversation where somebody's talking to you, and like there's a talk button that is in the control room that is being used to like Jenna da 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 Jenna da 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 Jenna make da 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 ask this question da 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 get him to say this. We'll circle back to that while you're trying to have a natural flow.
Yeah. And one of
Which
my
like,
favorite things that used to happen though used to be like it used to be funny. But I mean, listen, I get the people in the field when you're out there and you're the reporter and people are tossing to you, which I'm sure, like it and then let's say you have people in your ear because you're trying to maintain, like maybe you have a guest with you. If you're in the field and you have, like for this papal thing, maybe you're talking to a historian. So you have people in your ear telling you how much time you have. And let's say you prepare, I have 3 minutes with you, sir or ma'am, and this is where we're going with it. All of a sudden they come to like, you have 90 seconds. And you're like, okay, so you have to now change your conversation. And this is all done on the fly. This is done within like seconds, right?
yeah,
Like you've
yeah.
experienced that, I know, because and
Yes,
it's,
and the thing is that it's not just that you have 90 seconds, but you also have to wrap whatever this was up in 90
yes,
seconds and make sure that whoever that guest is still feels like they've been respected and have some dignity in the fact that like, yeah, we don't have time for whatever the fuck you were gonna say. So I'm gonna
it didn't always work where when we were at cable, when I worked in cable, that did not always happen, unfortunately. And you'd apologize. That was a tough part sometimes
Yes, that
because
rarely did happen. That is true.
it's no, I'm saying it definitely like for us it would happen because it was just a lot of times the host sometimes would be like it just depended on if they went long on a segment. And again, you go to the field and then that person has less time, or sometimes the reporter is the guest in the field and then they become that's a whole different story. Then you're going back and forth. You do as live sometimes. Something we would pre-record. That's like when you pre-record an interview with a reporter because
Hmm.
you knew that they had to leave and do something else, and therefore they were plopping that in the show. Um, it's just a lot that goes into when you cover these big breaking news stories that I don't know. Um, it's funny because it's a lot and it's exhausting.
Yes.
And
Well, that's the other
his,
thing is that a well staffed newsroom, when something like
yes,
this happens, it like, and everybody has like, it can get messy and like the downtimes are kind of squishy. But when something like this happens in a well staffed newsroom where everybody is clear on what their job is, the whole place literally just comes together like a living organism.
yeah.
And, but it's also, it's a lot of adrenaline. And then when it's over,
Oh, it's exhausting. And then sometimes you're just like, I don't want to go through that again. And then when it happens, sometimes depending, especially when it's something like this, which is more of a positive, you know what I mean? This is like celebratory, which is nice. Oftentimes it's not. You know what I mean? Oftentimes
yeah,
it's not. And
you're
it's
not calling the fire department or the police department to get a clear count
exactly.
on like bodies or something horrible like that.
This ends up being a lot of fun, but it's still a lot of work and you're exhausted. And then sometimes you got to do it again next day and you got to
Oh,
just
of
keep
course, because don't
reliving
get
it.
me wrong, like after, your show or your shift or whatever is done, there's also all the planning that's like of like I said, everybody in Chicago, what are we going to be getting from them? How soon are
Yeah.
we going to be getting it? Who's going to be booking for tomorrow? What are we going to be talking to them about? American Pope, blah blah blah, history of the Catholic Church. We need to get somebody on that. We need to get again, we're in New York, so get Cardinal Dolan, who no wait,
Yeah.
he's still in the Vatican. It doesn't matter. That dude, the Vatican's got to have like a satellite setup room because that dude's going to be
Exactly.
all over American,
Oh,
at least
and
New York.
good luck. That's a whole nother thing that used to be part of my job when I was working in that part of the industry was
Oh
having to
my
get book
God.
your you'd work with your
I hope that
satellite
dude has
department.
like a granola bar in his like cardinal cape because he's going to be busy.
He is, but you know what? Again, it's this is for the most it's a celebratory. It's a good
Yeah.
thing that people are talking about that even we got engaged with because it's fun watching it and
I'm
watching the
not even
whole
Catholic and I was weirdly engaged and like, who is it going to be?
I wasn't gonna watch it till you brought it up. I was like, okay, I'll watch it on when they post it on TikTok and I'll just see whoever the person
I was
was.
like, I'm not.
But
But
you
it's
get
the
hooked on it.
drama. It's the
It's the
pageantry.
drama. Yeah, it is. It's when you the reason why we started watching it was also because you were like at one point you were like, oh look. I think the curtain moved. And I'm like, did it? I'm like, is it going to happen? And then all of a sudden you get hooked in and you're like, fine, I'll watch it. It's fine. And it is fun though. I have to say, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun, and we have an I still am not. I think a lot of people are stunned that we have an American Pope.
I know. I know. It's really I'm I am shocked about that, but it's fascinating to see how it plays out.
Well,
But
what's
also
really, yeah,
no,
I
and
was gonna
also
say
how
what's yeah.
no,
We
it was
keep
I was
stepping on each other.
it's because we're both so excited. It's
Well,
like
no, because late night is gonna be lit for this.
oh, it's gonna I mean between late night and then of course SNL the weekend, like there's so much here for them to have fun with.
Exactly. And so, speaking of course, late night having fun, we're going to continue our conversation with producer extraordinaire, EP, senior producer, etc., Patrick King, continuing our conversation about especially what happens when a host goes too far. So, stay tuned.
Well,
And who's the guardrail, FYI?
well, the guardrail is honestly, it's the researchers. They're the ones that usually are saying you can't say that. Like I mean, literally, they will say like you cannot say that. Like this is factually untrue. And my rule always was I will fight you on facts. I will not fight you on your opinion. Your opinion is your opinion, but if you're getting something factually wrong, we're gonna have a fight. But then again, like, too far at Full Frontal, when we decided to call Ivanka Trump the C word, that was my third day of paternity leave. And that would not have made it on the air. And one of my old showrunner actually texted me that the morning after. She said, "So I guess your baby was born."
Because there was no one watching the shop, and
Yeah. And Sam texted me the morning after. She said, "Pat, you've been gone for less than a week, and I think I broke the show." But that was definitely an example of going too far. And like, it's the thing with comedy is like you push the limits, but then you need to rein it back in before you actually put it out there. So it's, the way you hear like a lot of stand-ups talk about how they will like workshop things in small clubs before they actually put it into their special or whatever. That's what they're doing is they're pushing the limits to see like, oh, okay, this pissed people off. I don't want to do that. This works. And it's sort of the same thing with late night writers is what you always want to do as a producer is let them go as far as they want and then you rein them in. You don't want to shut down the creative process while they're going through it. But then sort of once you have a script, then you go, okay, we got to rein this in. We got to bring that back a little bit. And when the guardrails aren't there, sometimes things end up on the air that probably shouldn't have been. And that was
yeah.
one of those examples.
So
But
does that mean that you, as executive producer, is the most important person in the room?
no, not saying that at all. Because also like I would get overruled. Like I wasn't a showrunner. I was showrunner-ish.
Okay.
I was showrunner adjacent. Um, but I didn't have final say on everything. There were times that if I really put my foot down, we wouldn't do something. But there were also times that like I got overruled. And, because at the end of the day, at Full Frontal, Sam was final voice on everything. So I could make my case to her. I could make my case to everybody on staff. And if at the end of the day I got overruled, I got overruled. And it definitely led to pieces on the air that I was uncomfortable with. They were factually correct. I just didn't always agree with where we got. And so, it's a give and take because also like everybody at the show has agency. Like everybody, like one of the things, again, I can only speak for the 3 shows that I worked on. I can't speak for
Hmm.
every show. But like one of the things was always best joke wins. It doesn't matter who pitched it. If the EP pitched it, if the writer pitched it, if a PA pitched it, it doesn't matter. Like if best joke wins. And so that was sort of like always the ethos that it's like even if the EP doesn't like it, if most of the staff thinks it's a good idea, we're gonna do it. So it's it's that is what it is. I mean, it's one of my favorite jokes early on at the Daily Show was an over the shoulder joke that we had something written for, and after our morning meeting, an intern went up to one of the writers and said, I actually think like I have a pitch. Is that okay? And the intern went to the writer, and the writer was like, yeah, what is it? And he pitched it, and it ended up being on the show, and it killed. So it was like that sort of dynamic is what makes these shows work, like a real egalitarian sort of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a much more rigorous hierarchy in most departments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and that was actually a big change that John brought to the Daily Show because it was coming out of that 90s era of like the writers are the kings of the show, and even the hosts don't really have a say. And John really brought that mentality of anybody that pitches, like the writers are not more special than anybody else because everybody does something at this show that makes this show work. And without them, and if you don't take them seriously, this show won't work. And it was a really great thing that he brought, and that ethos went on to Last Week Tonight. It went on to the Late Show with Colbert. It went on to um Full Frontal. Like that ethos has carried through a lot of shows. And I always talk about like people think about like the impact of Jon Stewart politically, and it's true. I mean, huge. But the other thing that you don't realize is the way that he shaped the culture of all these shows.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Oliver, Colbert, Sam, all had their own shows. Hassan Minaj had his own show. Um, Cordry, Helms, Carell, like all these people that came through the Daily Show that, I mean, Jessica Williams, come on. Like, like all these
Yeah.
Jessica Williams was like 23, I think, when she came to the Daily Show. And like nobody knew her, but John saw her reel and was like, that's a talent, and brought her on. And now, she's acting next to Harrison Ford. So, like, so it's the impact that he's had on the larger culture, not just on politics, I think is sometimes a little overlooked.
You know, looking at the content that's on the show, so
Mm.
what comes first when y'all are working in that bubble? Like, is it the news or is it the joke? Like, what comes first? Like, what dictates what you're
I mean,
covering?
it's a real chicken and egg thing. Like it's like I remember um there were so many times that we would have like a thing that was just like a takedown of the Democrats, and it was going to be brutal, and we were going to be ready to go with it. And then Fox News would go crazy about something overnight, and we would just scrap it because we were like, well, this is funnier and it makes us angrier. And that really was like, in a weird way, it's like the anger is what drives the comedy. It's like a very Lenny Bruce kind of a thing. Like it's like this thing really pisses me off, and I need the world to know about it. And now let's write some jokes about it. And a lot of times, some of the stuff is so cartoonish that it's very easy to write jokes to it. And sometimes you really have to like think about it and ponder it. And that's why like, that was also like why we would hire writers from all sorts of backgrounds. Some that came from stand up, some that came from journalism, but like you needed a bunch of different sensibilities. Otherwise, you would just always end up with the same jokes.
Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense, but I had no idea that they weren't all comedy writers.
No, not originally. I mean, it's like, to Tim Carvel, the EP and head writer of Last Week Tonight, was, I think he wrote for Forbes before he started writing.
Wow.
And he is a monster in the best way. He's one of the sweetest people in the world. But we would, like when I was at the Daily Show working with him, we would take stuff to writers, we would give them like the research, and they would turn in like a 5, 6, 7 page draft for their script. He would turn in a 20-page script in 2 hours. It's like it makes me think of Hamilton, like in Hamilton when they're like, and Hamilton wrote the other 51.
Yeah, literally just doing the most, dude. We appreciate the
But
effort, but this is the most.
but that's also why he's so good
Yeah.
at being the head writer there. I mean, it's like he's brilliant. He's the sweetest person in the world, but his pen is a knife in a way that like I've never seen before, and he's just wonderful. But to get back to your original question, like, it's like the story dictates the jokes dictate the story. It's a day by day thing. There's not like there's no set in place like way to do it every week. It's sort of like every day, every week is a little bit different. And so sometimes it'll literally be like a story that we weren't even planning on talking about, but somebody comes up with a killer joke. And so then you're like, all right, we got to do it. And then there are other times that it's like, this is going to be a tough one. We got to figure out how to make it funny, but we need to talk about this. Like I did a piece at Last Week Tonight on oil workers in North Dakota. Seems like it's like rife for comedy.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just like such a dark story overall. And like it didn't, we even used a clip of like a guy's body burning on the side of an oil derrick. And it was like brutal stuff. And it was like, but we still have to make it funny somehow. And
Right.
like, so it was a story that John was passionate about, or John Oliver was passionate
Yeah.
about, like really wanted to tell. And so, it kind of goes both ways. It's story to story. There are some stories that you're just like, we can't make it funny. And then there's some stories that are like, it's too important not to tell. So,
Are there are there any jokes or for any story that you've been on the shows you've worked on where it was a phenomenal joke, but it didn't end up making it, or anything that you were disappointed that didn't make it because it
yeah,
was so?
yeah. I mean, I can't give the exact jokes, but there were definitely times when I was producing that, when I was like a lower level producer, that like we would have a structure sort of set in place for a piece. And then during the rewrite process, John would sort of get, not John, I mean, it's every host does it, reads through scripts and then would sort of just get tired of some of the jokes and then forget that like those jokes added the context to make sense for the audience that didn't know the story that well. And so there were definitely times that I was like, no, don't take that out. It's not going to make any sense to anybody else. And there were other times also just like, it would be the sort of thing that I just disagreed with the way something should be structured. And I thought it was really good one way, and then it would get changed to another way, and then I would get very upset. But like, yeah, definitely times the jokes would get killed that were so good, but it was just that like people on staff kind of got tired of them,
Well,
which
with
was
the notion, oh, I was gonna say with the notion of like punching up, punching down, like looking, which shows lean left or right. That seems to be a very big thing right now.
mhm.
Can the quote unquote other side, more conservatives, obviously, can that be funny? Because there hasn't really been a comedy show that seems to, uh, a successful comedy show, I should say, that speaks to the right.
I mean, it can be. I mean, there are a lot of conservative comedians out there that are funny, but again, it's do you choose to punch up or punch down? Like
Mm.
you watch Gutfeld and you go like, oh, he's like picking on trans kids, and that's like classic punching down. And his show does well in the ratings, but it's also because it's the only conservative late night show, and the rest of the audience is spread against a bunch of others. Um, so when you think about it in that context, It's the other late night shows, if you combine their ratings, are much higher than what Gutfeld's doing. But it's a lot of punching down, and it's mean in a way that, we always at least tried not to be. I always tried to push shows away from name calling and, doing any sort of body shaming just because I thought it was cheap. It's also like, if we're going to go after somebody and make them feel bad, I want them to feel bad because of their like ideas and their
Mm.
policy things. I don't want them to feel bad because we like made fun of their cankles, like it's just not, to me, that's not funny. It's not smart. And it's just sort of, yeah, it's just like mean spirited.
I'm gonna
So
say it taps into like a different kind of, it taps into anger. Sometimes I feel like when you watch some of that, it's more about people who are angry and it doesn't tap into the actual comedy aspect of it. It's like it's comedy through an opinion, but it really isn't funny. It's not like actually going like I think what the Daily Show, some of the other shows do that so well, where it's like you can laugh even if you don't agree with it. You can laugh
you
at
could
it.
laugh. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that a lot. And I think that like, to go back to Fox News, like they've tried different iterations. Like they did the half hour news hour. That
Oh,
was
I was there
just
for that.
like,
Yes.
that was a supremely not funny show. And I like give them credit for trying, but
Mhm.
they, they were making jokes about Oprah. Like when Oprah endorsed Barack Obama, they were like, Oprah's got O magazine. So I guess now it's BO magazine. Get
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
BO.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
so bad. It's actually kind of
I know. It's the kind of thing that like if you did it on purpose to satirize jokes, then it would be
Yes.
funny. Like if it was one level above it, it would have
yeah.
been but like
Brilliant. It would have been brilliant. Maybe that's what
yeah.
they should have tapped into. We're making, yeah,
The
but
the
that's
the,
not
o-
what they meant.
the only sketch on there that I enjoyed was there was one where it was about like a talk show where it's a bunch of atheists and they keep like the person interviewing the people on the panel one by one, like the lights keep falling on the atheist heads, and then finally it's just one atheist left and it's like, yeah, I believe in God, I believe in God, okay. Like it was actually kind of clever, like it was kind of fun, but like overall it was just terrible. um it's here's the difference. Those shows come from a place of ideology and add the comedy onto it. Whereas the shows that I've worked on come from a place of, this is what moves us, and it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans, liberals or conservatives. It's something happened that made us feel something. And that's what you're going to go with. And that's where the comedy comes from because it flows out of that so easily. But they start from an ideological place. They come from we need to protect our people. And I'm not saying the people at these shows don't have biases. They do, obviously.
We
But
all do.
yeah, everybody does. But that wasn't where we came from. It never came from like, what is our liberal stance on this story that just happened today? It was, this story happened today. Here's why I'm mad about it. Now let's write jokes to it. If
Sure.
that's probably the easiest way to boil it down. Um, but it never came from a place of like, oh, we can't say that about Barack Obama. It's like, you it was never like we need to protect the tribe sort of a thing. It was like, we're gonna make jokes about it. Like we were brutal on Obama
I
on
was
like
gonna say
on
you
the
guys
phone
went
stuff.
in on Obama
Yeah.
on the Daily Show, and if I just my favorite joke that felt so freaking true was the one trying to explain they're never gonna let you in the car. You're bringing an NPR tote bag to a knife fight. I still use
Yeah.
that line to people now.
I know, that was such a great line. I wish I could take credit for it. The only thing I can really take credit for is the name of our inauguration coverage for Obama was, um I pitched it to John the day after the election. I couldn't believe that he remembered it, but Rebirth of a Nation. And I was like, it kind of hits on a bunch of levels. And then also naming Ali Belshi the Prophet of Doom. The writer added in the hairless part, but I came up with the Prophet of Doom, and he apparently is very tickled by that. So
Love that. Absolutely love
yeah,
that. Okay, so we're wrapping up, but I do want to ask, so given everything that we've talked about and the way that people are, again, getting their news and information and digesting, what do you think happens when comedy news shows become the most trusted news, where that's no longer a joke at the beginning of the Daily Show, the most trusted comedy news show, it just
yeah,
becomes the most trusted news show?
yeah. I mean, my personal feeling is that you can't um you can't get the jokes and can't get everything if you don't already have a foot into the news already. Like if we're making jokes about Stephen Miller, it's not going to make any sense if you don't already kind of know who he is. So I would say that there's no way it can be the most trusted source in news. It's I will say I loved in 2008 at the Daily Show when we were like we called ourselves the leaders in fake news, and now that's been completely co-opted. But but I don't know. I think that the thing that's changed is like the Daily Show still does what they do, and they do it very well. A lot of the other shows have started doing their own journalism and their own research, which even at the beginning of Last Week Tonight, like Oliver would not have admitted that that's what they were doing, but that is clearly what it is now. Um, and it's just because, again, like we get back to resources, like these shows have more resources
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of news shows. And I think that there's like a different sensibility between the people that produce these shows versus the people that produce a lot of news. Like these shows aren't necessarily always going for like this is the hottest story of the day. It's the like this is again like this is what made us angry. This is what we found joy in. This is what we could write jokes to. So it's like it's kind of the same thing, but it's also kind of the sensibilities are just very different. Um, I'm not saying that it's better than the other. It's just different.
How did you, so what was your journey to becoming like a late night journalist?
I, well, my plan when I went to school was to be a war correspondent. I thought that I was going to be like dodging bullets in Afghanistan. And then sort of along the way, like I was bartending one night and I had the Daily Show on while I was cleaning up. And I saw John interview Stephen Hayes in 2002 in the lead up to the Iraq War. And John like really was really well researched and like really went at him. And I was like, that's where I want to work, is like the guy that like is making hysterical jokes in the first and second act, and then in the third act doing this incisive interview. And that's sort of what led me to pursue working there. It actually was like comedy was not my focus. Um, and I think that's sort of what John appreciated about me also, was that I wasn't the person in the room that was always just trying to get my joke on the air. I was like the person that was like, no, here's the interesting story. Here are the sound bites we can use. Here's why it's important. And you guys make it funny. I can tell you what to talk about. I can't tell you what jokes to make. I got to that point later, but yeah, that's sort of what led me to it was the lead up to the Iraq War and the way that John was representing what I saw as the truth better than anything I was seeing on the news. Um, and I just sort of like held that with me the entire time that I worked in late night, that it was like it's truth first, jokes second. Nobody will ever say that, but it's true. Like, I mean, it's the most famous line from The Simpsons is it's funny because it's true. Um, but it's that's right. Like, you have to be so careful about getting things correct before you can add the jokes. Because if you're just going wildly, lefty conspiracy stuff, it's not gonna work because people are gonna call BS on you. So
Well,
anyhow,
listen, Pat, it's been absolutely great. This has been a fascinating conversation and illuminating, and I think gives more insight into perhaps where all of this is going, because definitely news media is in a transition, whether we like it or not.
yeah.
So,
Well, but also, I mean, just one last quick thing.
yeah,
If you see where things are migrating now, it's, so much of news consumption is being delivered through TikTok, where people are doing short, funny, not that always well researched, but it's the same. I feel like it's the same thing. Like, instead of sitting down for 30 minutes and watching a late night show, people are consuming it in, like, snackable bites.
Mhm.
But that's where this type of news consumption is going. It's funny, pretty well produced, hopefully well researched stuff that's showing up online on TikTok. So we'll see where it goes. I'm just
exactly.
hoping that these
Mhm.
shows stick around for a while because I love them.
So do
Same
we.
here. So do we. Pat, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks, Pat.
us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Laid Off and Looking is an independent podcast conceived of and created by Jenna Flanagan and Dominic Camia.
Music provided by Jake Howitt. Research by Laura Rothenbucker.
You can watch and follow us on YouTube.
Or you can listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you have any questions or suggestions, we want to hear from you. So leave a comment.
We do check them.
Or reach out to us anytime at laidofandlookingpod@gmail.com.
New episodes every Friday.